Hello, everyone. My name is Sajan Stephen Park with LA County Library, and I welcome you to Life Skills for Emerging Adults, Moving Out on Your Own. This program is supported in part by the U.S. Institute of Museum and Library Services under the provisions of the Library Services and Technology Act, administered in California by the State Librarian. This is part of a series of programs for LA County Library focusing on helpful life skill topics for emerging adults, ages 18 to 25. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Brian Diaz. Brian is my brother's keeper, peer advocate with LA County Library, and he's been providing in-person programs for emerging adults this year on a variety of topics. And we're grateful for him to present today on today's topic of moving out on your own. Thank you, Brian. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Diaz, and I am a My Brother's Keeper peer advocate with LA County Library. And today, we're going to be talking about life skills for emerging adults, more specifically, moving out on your own. Now, even though you don't have the interest of moving out right now immediately, it's always good to know in the back of your head some things that you should have or you should know about moving out on your own, because there's quite a lot of things to take in consideration. So let's get started with this program. So, is it better to rent or buy? Well, that's the age-old question, right? Well, there's a lot of pros and cons to both, right? And one of some pros about renting is, it's lower maintenance and it's more flexible. But you have to deal with rent increases, loud neighbors, or strict landlords. Now, me personally, I live in an apartment right now, and there's just some things that I can't do as if I were to be living in a home, right? Same goes now, in the contrary, going with buying a house. It does give you ownership, privacy, and home equity, but it's expensive when it comes to repairs, taxes, interest, and insurance. So, how we mentioned is just a lot of it's pros and cons to both situations. That being if a house is more applicable to you or if renting is more applicable to you. It all just depends on the individual, right? And we're going to be going over some things to consideration regarding this topic. So let's move on. Now, are you ready to buy a house? Well, one thing to take first in consideration is if you are debt-free. Now, you're probably wondering, Brian, what does it matter if I'm debt-free if I'm ready to buy a house? Well, actually, there's a lot to know about that. If you aren't debt-free, let's say you have some credit cards, you have car payments, student loans, personal loans, all that builds up, right, over time. And adding a house payment to that isn't going to be easy, right? So the first thing we need to establish is if we are rent-free, right? The next thing we want to establish is if you have an emergency 3 to 6 months of expenses, right? And that's also around the same corner of if you're debt-free, right? Now, you don't know, there could be a rainy day one day, there could be an emergency. Hopefully there isn't, but just in case if there is, it's always to have a backup of 3 to 6 months, just in case, maybe work is slow, maybe the car's tire just flies out, right? Or the engine just disappears, right? You just never know. So there's always something that we need to have in our back pocket just in case. And probably the most important question you should ask yourself is if you have a 5 to 10% down payment, right? Now, for first-time home buyers, we recommend at least a 5 to 10% down payment on a 15-year fixed rent mortgage. If you can save 20% for your down payment, you won't have to pay private mortgage insurance, also known as PMI, which could save you a couple $100 a month. When deciding when you can spend on a house, make sure your mortgage payment, including principal, interest, property taxes, homeowners insurance, PMI, and HOA, also known as homeowners association fees, will be 25% or more or less of your take-home pay. Now, if you've answered yes to all these 3 questions, then you may be ready to buy a house, But if you've answered no to any of these questions, then it may be best for you to consider renting before you buy a house. Now, we're going to go into the aspect of the renting of, moving out, but renting as opposed to buying a house. Towards the end of the program, we'll get into some websites that is very beneficial and there's more resources and more information regarding buying a house and all the aspects that go to it. But we're most likely going to be going through the renting aspect of it. So let's go ahead and move on. So when is renting best, right? Well, when you're paying off debt, as opposed to if you're debt free, sometimes we have debt that we still need to pay, and that's perfectly fine, right? Maybe you have a few credit cards you need to pay, as I mentioned. Maybe you still have some student loans you still need to pay. Maybe you took out a personal loan. But all these things consideration, you need to have to pay off, still coming into you wanting to rent. So paying off debt is one thing. If you still are paying off debt, then that's probably when it's best to rent. Or if your job requires you to move around, sometimes the commute time from where you live to where you're going isn't always going to be stable. Let's say one day your job tells you to go to Long Beach, and then the following week they tell you to go to Torrance, and then they tell you to go to Lancaster. So, just having, let's say you buy the house and you're over in the Baldwin Park area. That's not a stable place. That's not a stable area until you be going around all these places. And then you have to worry about gas and all these mileage going around. So if that's the case, and you know you're going to be in that job for a while, then it's probably best to rent. And also, if you need some time to make a plan, let's say, you just got engaged. Let's say you just got accepted to a new Cal State or UC, right? And you just need time to think. Well, at that point, it's best just to rent. You don't want to rush into anything and just buy a house, right? And then like a year later, you're like, oh, well, I got to go now. So what's going to happen? So at that point, it's better to just rent. Now, what do you need before you move out? Well, there's a couple things that we need before we move out, right? First and most importantly is having some money, right? Some income and a job. So we can't get really far if we don't have any money, right? Unfortunately, there's a lot of things that we like and that requires money. So that's probably the first primary thing that we need when wanting to move out, right? We also need to know an apartment or in a house. Now, that's meaning where are we going to move out? We need to know exactly where are we going to go. It's not like we're just going to throw a dart in the map and we're just be like, yep, I want to live right there. So, we need to make sure, is renting better? Is buying better? Some things to take in consideration. Roommates. So we're going to talk about roommates a bit later down the slides, but roommates is something you also want to take in consideration. Is that something you mind? Do you mind having roommates? Do you not want roommates? Do you want to live by yourself? Or is it, if you want to invite a friend, you want to have as a roommate? Some things to think about. Now, as silly as it sounds, you do need some bed. You do need a bed, some sheets for the bed, and some pillows, right? You can't just move out to a place and you're going to look around and you're going to be like, well, where's the bed? You do need a bed, right? You need some bed, you need some sheets, you need some pillows. You also need some cooking utensils, right? Unfortunately, you just can't take mom's or dad's cooking utensils, right? I tried, it didn't work out really for me. So you're going to need some spatulas. You're going to need one of those wooden like spoons, like the big ones to move around. You're going to need a lot of those things, right? Because you're starting fresh at a new house. You're going to need some food, right? Everybody likes food, right? But, again, you can't take mom's or dad's food. I tried, I'm telling you, it didn't work out. You're going to have to start living on your own. So we're going to have to start getting our own food. We're going to need a laundry basket and some detergent, gonna come a time where we're going to have to wash our clothes, right? So we're going to need laundry detergent, right? To wash some clothes. Cleaning supplies. We're going to need some wipes. We're going to need some Clorox, some Windex, just things that you're going to need around the house to clean it around. Eating utensils, right? Forks, spoons, knives. Again, I'm telling you, we're not going to be able to take moms and dads. I tried, it didn't work. We're going to have to get our own. We're going to have to get a kitchen table, a dining set, right? So just like how we talked about the bed, as silly as it sounds, once we get to a new place, we're going to need a kitchen table to place our food, to sit down, enjoy our meal. And we're going to have to think about utilities, water, power, gas. Moving out, you don't think about these things, but they're gonna have to come a time where your electricity stops working, and you're gonna be wondering what's going on. Well, those are some things that you have to think about. Does the apartment apply already take it when you're renting, or are you gonna have to purchase it separately? Now, the next two that we have written down here is couch and TV, right? So I was looking at this PowerPoint earlier and I was thinking, well, do we need a couch? Do we need a TV? Probably not, right? But the thing is, thinking about moving out, there's also something you need to consider is if you already have a family, right? If you have kids, your partner, let's say, how are you going to entertain the kids, right? You could give them your phone, but then you have no phone. So you're going to have a TV for them to watch something, right? And you're going to have a place for them to sit, right? You can't take the kitchen dining tables to go watch TV, because then let's say you want to go eat, now you have no chair. It's just a problem, right? So do we need it? Yes, kind of in a way, but it's not a big necessity, right? Now, what do you need to move out on your own, right? What are some primary barriers in living independently? So if you want to go ahead and put on chat some of the things that you need and specifically that you think are necessities for you to move out on your own, right? Personally for me, right? I would need some kind of shipping boxes already, right? If I want to move out on my own, some place to put some bins. Primarily necessities for me, well, it would have to be the 3 to 6 months emergency plan, right? I probably have like a week to 2 weeks emergency fund. No, I'm kidding. I have a good, I have a good amount, but that's probably, for me personally, that's something that I will need to take in consideration, right? Let's go ahead and move on. Now, how much rent can I afford? So you're probably thinking, okay, well, I probably have a good understanding that I want to rent, right? But how much rent can I afford? Well, first thing you're going to have to do is find a percentage of rent expenses from your gross income, that being pre-tax. Now, many financial experts say that your rent expenditure should be around one third in order to adequately achieve other financial goals, such as retirement and college funds. An example of that being, if you're bringing home around $6,000 a month pre-tax, right? Your monthly rent should be no cost than $2,000 or less. Now, even as that sounds, that you're probably thinking, well, I probably have like $4,000 left over, right? That's still that's pretty good, right? Yeah, it's the standard of what some financial experts say it should be. You don't want to just be like, oh, I have 4,000 left over, so I could just go crazy, right? I could get all these modifications on my car. Well, there's some other things that you have to take consideration as well, right? That being the debt part of it, if we had debt, food, right? Gas, the utility section of it, a lot of things, right? And again, like how I mentioned before, if we have a family already, well, that's just another expense that we're gonna have to be thinking of, right? But just for we won't get into that much, but just the renting portion of it, if you're taking a home $6,000 a month pre-tax, then it shouldn't cost you $2,000 or less. Let's go ahead and move on. Now, how to afford monthly rate, right? So you're probably thinking, well, Brian, you told me how much I could afford, but now I'm struggling on how to afford monthly rent, right? Don't worry, I'm here to help. So we're gonna have to come back on some expenses. Yeah, I know. So for all you coffee lovers out there, yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough out there. So, we're gonna have to trim on your grocery budget. Now you're probably thinking, well, how am I gonna be able to do that, right? It's food, right? I'm gonna have to need this food. Yes, but there's some things that we need and there's some things that we want, right? So let's say you're going out grocery shopping. Let me set the scene, right? We're going out grocery shopping, and normally, you like your favorite type of chips, your cookies, your candy, right? And then, the basic vegetables, meat, dairy, etc., right? Well, easy way to cut down on it, right? Do we need chips? Do we need cookies? Or do we need candy? now, right? Not really. So as opposed to just cutting all of it out, because it's probably going to hit us and we're going to feel it a lot stronger if we just cut everything out. How about every time we go grocery shopping, as opposed to getting all three, we just get the one, and then we just alternate throughout the weeks, right? That's just a trimming, as we said right here, trimming of our grocery budget. Now, you probably may think, oh, it's probably not going to save a lot, right? But you'd be surprised. It'll add up over time, and it definitely will help you save a bit more on your monthly expenses. Getting roommates, how we mentioned before, roommates is we're gonna talk about roommates a bit more later on in the slides, but having roommates could help you afford paying rent, right? Renting a room. So maybe someone, a friend, a cousin, a family member, right? And maybe that they have an extra room. Maybe you could talk to them and tell them, hey, I was thinking about moving out on my own, but I'm just not quite there by living by myself. So I was thinking if you could rent a room for me for the time being, something simple like that could definitely help you save up, right? For the previous things that we were talking about, the being debt free, being 3 to 6 months emergency fund, and not the down payment, because that's just buying a house, right? But those two necessities, those are always great to have, right, in your back pocket. Increase your income, right? So maybe you could start doing a side hustle on the side, or maybe we could increase our income by having an income. Maybe some of us are unemployed at the time, and by having an income technically increases our income, right? So, just finding ways to increase our monthly income could help us afford monthly rent. And you may have to consider a more affordable neighborhood, right? So there's just some places where the rent is going to be a bit more expensive than other places, right? Let's say, here in Cali, don't get me started. But that's another thing, the topic, right? But there's just other ways and other neighborhoods that we could go to that it'd be more affordable, right? So that's just all. We just have to do research on that. Now, where to search for apartments? Well, there are plenty of different websites that we went through and that we are providing you with that you could go ahead and search for apartments. Websites such as Website Rentals, Zumper, Zillow, and apartments.com, right? But if we're a little old school, right, we could look through the newspaper like LA Times and our local city newspaper. So definitely those are two great resources that we could use for searching apartments. We could talk to friends, neighbors, family members, how we mentioned on renting a room. Maybe we could talk to a friend, neighbor, or family members that they may know of a place that's vacant that we just don't happen to know. And, talking to them could just open up more opportunities for us to know where to search for apartments. We could speak with a campus housing coordinator, saying let's say if we're going to college, right? So speaking with the campus housing coordinator, they maybe know some other place that we don't know of, right? They just know people that we don't, just like, some friends, when we talk to some friends, they know of people that we don't. So that's just more of a variety, more options that we get to go through that they may know. And then finally, we have a website also with the Section 8 housing. Now, towards the end of the program, we'll see if we have enough time to show this website, but that's just another way to search for apartments. So let's go ahead and move on. All right, so we've gone to our question side of the presentation. Not sure if Stephen have any questions from the audience.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for that. We got a couple questions here. Let's see. First one, isn't a credit score important? Shouldn't I need debt to keep my score up?
That's a great question. Yeah, credit score is important. Yeah, definitely. There's many different factors and having a credit score, right? Starting at a young age. There's also something that you could do all this process without a credit score, right? But that's just going to take a bit more work. Since there's no record of you lending, like borrowing money and paying them back at a stable time, there's no record of that, right? So, but there's other ways, you could show bank statements, you could show your pay stubs, right? But let's say you do have a credit score, right? Credit score is definitely way important because that's just the way of a house lender seeing how you pay off debt. So if they see that you have a good credit score, then definitely, that'll definitely help and just make the process of buying a house or renting a lot smoother. And, if unfortunately our credit score is a bit lower, then we might have to look for a co-signer. That's when it comes to that.
Thanks, Brian. Another question. For mortgages, I heard that you can get a mortgage with 3% down payment. Why do I need to save more?
That's a great question. Well, it just depends on the area. Maybe Stephen, you could help look up some things on that. But personally,
Yeah.
for me, I feel like it just depends on the area, or in terms of like how much you need to save up. But I feel like personally, the more that you save up, it's just going to benefit you more, you in the long run, when you are renting or buying this household.
Mm-hmm. Something I learned was if your down payment is less than, I believe, 20%, there's additional insurance you have to pay. I think it's called the PMI. And I'm not an expert on this, but so there's additional cost to having a down payment be under a certain percentage. And something else I've learned is that the higher your down payment, the less your monthly mortgage payments are going to be. So, the higher the down payment you can gather, it just helps your lifestyle, your quality of life, cost of living on a monthly basis. So
No,
those are two
definitely,
things.
definitely.
Let's see. For the calculation for your gross income for rent, would that be for an individual or household income?
That's a great question also. I would say if you are, well, in this case, if you are moving out by yourself, then it would have to be independent income, right? But if it is more of a household thing, let's say your partner is also working, well, that would just benefit you even more because it'll be less on both of you, right? So you would combine both your monthly income as well as your partner's both your income, and then the house payment on both of your behalves won't feel as significant as if it was by yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple other questions on housing. Yeah, I think you could do a whole presentation on how to buy a house, but for down payments, there's also additional costs of there's a closing cost. Can you talk a little bit about that?
A closing cost. Interesting. I do remember
Yeah,
reading a bit more about that. Um, let's
yeah,
see, on top of my head. Maybe you could help me out here, Stephen. But from
yeah,
the closing cost,
yeah. One of my friends bought a house a couple of years ago, and there's additional payments you have to pay for like the real estate agent, additional fees associated with getting the loan. So apart from just the down payment and the monthly cost, there's also a certain percentage that you have to pay on top of that. So needless to say, it's all buying a home is definitely expensive. And there's additional costs that are associated with that you find out when you do the research.
it's a great
Um,
question, though. Definitely a great
yeah,
question.
let's see here. Oh yeah, we have a great answer from one of our attendees. Home buying closing costs can also include attorney fees, property appraisals, and mortgage fees. Sometimes these are fixed, other times they're negotiable. So thank you.
Mm,
Thank you for that answer.
Awesome.
Let's see. I think this is more of a comment, especially in California. What about inflation, right? Price of both
Mm,
groceries and egg prices are very expensive.
yeah.
I don't know if I have an answer to that.
Well, yeah, it's just something we need to deal with, right? Living here around the area. If that's just something that's just a part of us, unfortunately. But in other places, if you're considering out moving out of states, maybe, but then you also need to think about other things around other states, right? So, like, let's say one thing I could think of on top of my head, that being the minimum wage, right? Minimum wage in different states are different from California, right? So, it's just, you kind of just outweigh both out of all the things that you could think of, like housing wise too. Also, something you also need to think about is natural disasters, right? Here in California, we don't need to buy hurricane insurance, right? But other places in the States, that's a necessity because that's probably happening like every other month or week or so. So that's just some things to think into. But yeah, definitely that's a great comment from one of our participants. Who else?
Yeah, those are all great questions. Thank you. Thank you for the
Awesome.
answers.
So we're gonna go ahead and move on on our presentation, and we'll get to another slide where we could ask more questions on what we're going to be learning a bit more. So let's go ahead and move on. But great questions. Thanks, everybody. Go ahead and keep rolling them out. So all right. So now we got to our roommate slide, right? So how do you feel about roommates? Pros and cons. So I encourage, the participants to go ahead and just write a little comments on the comment section on how you feel about roommates, right? Do you dislike them? Do you like having roommates? Is it something that's like, no, I don't want to deal with roommates. I prefer living on my own, or, you know what, actually, I don't mind having roommates. I could probably invite a friend. I could probably have a brother or cousin or somebody else as a roommate. And, I wouldn't mind that at all. If even it would even be more beneficial to me, right? I would love to have company. Well, there's just a couple things, right, to take in consideration. Me personally, having roommates, I was asked this question when I just turned 18. A group of friends of mine were going to get a house. Well, not a house. They're going to rent an apartment. And they asked me, like, hey, Brian, we're thinking about moving out and we're probably going to get an apartment. Excuse me. And we're considering if you wanted to, come and live with us. And, 18-year-old Brian was like, yes, sign me up. Of course, I'm there. But then, I started thinking a bit more. And over the years, now, if you ask me that, I'd probably have to pass. Not only just because of, not live with roommates or anything of that, but there's just a lot of things that you need to consider, right? Having that now you have that stable income. If you have stable income, now you have to have a monthly payment, right? Who's going to take care of the utilities? Parking is going to be an issue because apartments, sometimes they only issue you one parking space. There's just a lot of things to think of, right? But, it all just depends on the individual. There's pros and cons, like how we said about roommates. So there's a couple things that we have written down here. So you should consider roommates, especially for your first on their own experience. So, how my friends mentioned to me if they wanted me to move out and live with them. Well, if the time was right and maybe, if I had a stable income at the time, I probably would have considered it a bit. Well, I did consider it, right? But I probably would have gone through it as opposed to just saying yes and not going through it all. But that's just maybe you should consider that when moving out on your own for the first time, right? And you should create a list of qualities that you're looking for in a roommate, right? Your list might include some things like, you need to be somewhat of being quiet. They have to be kind. They need to be thoughtful. They need to clean their messes. They need to be outgoing. They need to be financially stable. That's a big important one, right? Work schedule wise, they need to know when they're going to be coming in the house. They're gonna, let's say when you're going to sleep, they're just waking up because they work midday or the graveyard shift, right? That's just something that we need to consider. Creating a roommate agreement is something very important, right? So that's just some list of whatever things both of you agree upon under the living environment. So maybe, there's some pet peeves of yours that you need to tell your roommate that, over time might just bother you. So you might as well just put it in the roommate agreement, as opposed to, and the same as their situation too. Let's say they have some pet peeves or they have some things that, they don't want in a roommate, or some things you need to follow in terms of rules. These are, just some things that you should both be accounted for. So you could, you'll brainstorm a list on where to look for a roommate. You could look through them through work, school, church affiliations, friends, family, social gatherings, etc. And if you could think of anything else, go ahead. I encourage you to type it in chat. And then once we get to our next question slide, Stephen could go ahead and tell us some of the things that you've been typing in chat. So we talked about the roommate agreement, right? So you're probably thinking, all right, well, roommate agreement, that sounds reasonable, right? But what should be on a roommate agreement? How do I start one? What are some lists and qualities that should be in it? So some things to consider, how would you handle utilities, paying rent? Earlier in this program, I mentioned how I was considering, okay, well, now I'm going to have to have to pay rent, right? Every month, and who's going to handle the utilities? Well, that's definitely something you need to think about. If you have roommates, are they going to cover the water bill? Am I going to cover the water bill? Am I covering all utilities? That's just some things you need to think, right? Noise in the apartment, right? So like how I mentioned, let's say one of your roommates works the graveyard shift, right? In that case, when you're asleep, they're awake, and when they're awake, you're asleep. So you're going to have to go over some things like that. How would they handle overnight guests, right? Let's say they have some friends, some buddies over. Are we going to have it from a time frame that you could have people, or are you just going to kind of have it where, hey, I'll just let you in advance if I'm going to bring someone over? How would they keep the apartment clean? Who's going to take care of cleaning the apartment? Is it just okay, whatever mess I make, I'll clean, or for this week, I'll clean the dishes. The next week, you clean the dishes, right? How should food be managed? So food is very important, right? Well, we all need food, right? So, don't touch my cookies, I'll tell you that. But that's just something you need to talk about in the roommate agreement. So am I going to buy groceries for the month of May? Or are you going to buy the groceries for the month of June? Well, some things to talk about. What common rules should they have with dirty dishes? All right, we talked about it a bit right now. Am I going to wash the dishes for the first week and then you follow the next week, and it's just going to be kind of like a on and off type of thing? And the last thing is, how would they like to handle disagreements regarding any of the roommate agreements items? So, it's going to be like a list of rules. Let's say one of us breaks the rules. Well, what are the consequences? There has to be some sort of consequences, right? Awesome. So let's go ahead and move on. Renter's insurance. So this is very important. So if you weren't paying attention till now, I highly suggest we start paying attention right about now, because renter's insurance is something very, very important. So renter's insurance is a type of protection that will cover the cost of your possessions if they are damaged, vandalized, or stolen while you are renting. So what does that mean, right? So it does three main things, right? First, it covers the cost of replacing your things in the event of theft, fire, storm, vandalism, electrical malfunctions, or plumbing issues. Okay. It also gives you liability coverage, meaning if someone is injured at your place, you'll be financially protected from medical bills or legal fees. And lastly, it pays for additional living expenses if you need to stay at a hotel while your place is being repaired. So why is this all important, right? Well, it's a big importance. Let's say for whatever reason, right, we're renting and the house just goes up in flames for no reason, no particular reason, right? And let's say you just bought the new console, right? The PlayStation 28, right? Just came out. Ah, darn, and it just burned down, right? Or, you have other things around the house too, right? With renter's insurance, you'll be covered on replacing those items. Also, it gives you liability coverage in case of anyone that's in your household does get hurt. And it also, let's say your house is being fumigated, right? There's, let's say they give you the weekend, you're gonna have to not move out, but go out of your household for the weekend, right? Well, where are you gonna sleep, right? You're gonna have to get a hotel, and that's gonna cost more money. But if you have renter's insurance, those living expenses will be covered by that. So you won't have to put a single dime. And something you'll also have to check with your current insurance company to add a renter's insurance policy to your plan, or you can shop around for more affordable coverage. So, sometimes your renters does offer this type of insurance, or you could ask around, see if you get it for somewhere else. But that's all very important things that we need to think of, right? And many landlords landlord, sorry, may require renter's insurance. That's also something to take in consideration. So let's go ahead and move on. Okay, we've got into our question side. So I know I covered a lot of things. So if there's any questions so far, Stephen will go ahead and
I hear one question. Does the roommate agreement need to be notarized?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time, Stephen?
Does the roommate agreement need to be notarized? Yeah, and I just looked that up too, so I think I have an answer.
Okay.
Says here, if the roommate agreement is written correctly and outlined, and two parties sign it, then it doesn't need to be notarized. Same for a leasing agreement. It doesn't need to be notarized as long as it's printed and two parties sign it.
So
that's a question.
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Let's see. And I don't know the answer to this one. Is earthquake damage covered by renter's insurance?
I believe renter's insurance. Let's go back a slide. Events of theft, fire, storm, vandalism, electrical functioning, or plumbing issues. I believe that some renter's insurance will cover earthquake damage, or it may have to be something separate that you may have to purchase on its own. But I believe, for the most part, it should cover it.
Yeah, I'm getting some answers here. You should check with your landlord. Probably depends on the property you're staying at.
Right. Yeah, just kind of like how we were mentioning before. If you go out and move to another state, there's just other natural disasters insurance that you need to think of. Earthquakes is a huge one here in California, right? We get them not as often, but we do get them, and it's definitely something we should think about having insurance on it, right? So that's a great question.
Yeah, and we had a great resource from our colleague Jose. We have a legal information reference center on our database page. He posted the link in the chat. So if you go there, that'll direct you to some more resources on these specific questions too.
Awesome.
Another question, does renter's insurance only apply to renting?
Does renter's insurance only apply to renting? These are great questions. You guys are keeping me on my toes, I'll tell you that. Renter's insurance, well, it's within the name renting, right? I believe also with buying a house, there should be some sort of insurance that covers that, but I'm not quite sure if it's still under the same name as renter's insurance.
Yeah, I believe it's, again, the Legal Information Reference Center will give us more answers here, but I believe it's a homeowner's insurance. That's the difference if you own a home. And yep. Yeah, all great questions. I'm definitely learning a lot. Any more questions in the chat? Not at this time.
All right.
Yeah, move on.
Great questions. Thank you, Stephen. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So we've gotten almost towards our end of our program. And at this section of our program, I'm going to show you two great resources I found. So before you rent, right? Fortunately, there's a lot of resources to help you figure out how much you can afford to pay in rent and navigate signing through a lease agreement. One great LA County resource available to everyone comes in the form of information from the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. And I'm going to show you guys that just right now. So let's go ahead and change our page. All right. So here we have the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs page, right? There's a lot of information here, but where I want to direct you guys is right here under tenants and landlords. So under the basic for renters and landlords, we have here before you rent tab. So go ahead and click it. We're going to let that load. And under that tab, as this loads, there's great information on some of the things we've talked about, but there's just more of an legal information about it as they prioritize over these things. So we have like before you rent side of it, our rental agreements and leases, credit checks, as someone mentioned about credit, your credit score. So that's a great tool here. Holding deposits, security deposits, and we have the sections here, and you can navigate through it here. I'll tell you here, credit checks, leases, but you could also click one of these tabs. So let's just check one of them real fast. Let's go before you rent, right? So let's go ahead and let that load. And now that that is loading, we're going to scroll down, and they just have information on some things that you should know before you rent. Setting a budget, creating a criteria list, start the search, visiting and inspecting the property, check the problems. These are all great things that you should also think about when renting a place, right? Let's say you go check out the place. That's something very important that you need to do. It's like buying a new car, right? You're not just gonna go through the website. It's not the same as going through the website and just clicking buy, as opposed to you going, looking at the car for yourself, test driving it. All that same process has to come with renting or buying a house too, right? You need to go and inspect the house for yourself, see if you like it, all those great things, right? They have rental application and credit checks information here, checking your credit report, fees, references, signing a lease or rental agreement, all just great information, right? Now, I want to direct you also, in the beginning of the program, I mentioned how we were going to talk about more of the renting side of it. And I also promised everyone how I'll show you a website. The website is the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. And I would direct you on a bit more information on buying a home, right? So if we go under homeowners, under basic for homeowners, we'll find this tab called buying a home. So let's go ahead and click that tab real quick. And as that loads, if you have any questions regarding any of this, finding some things, go ahead and pop them in chat. And towards the end, once I finish showing you the website, I'll go ahead and I could help you guys maneuver if you need any more assistance. So here on buying a home, we have the main tab. We have avoiding predatory lending, escrow, co-signing a contract, homeowner notification programs. So under buying a home, there is quite a lot of information that is just very beneficial and very useful for us. So how do I find a home? What can I afford? Getting a home loan, making an offer, right? All these things are something that we definitely need to take in consideration when wanting to move out. And something I wanted to show you is this right here. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight it for everyone real quick. Oh, one more time. So to attend a free class for first-time home buyers, contact the LA County Community Development Commissions, or you could call this number on screen, or visit them online on this website. And they'll give you free class, they'll give you a free commission on some things that you need to learn, or just if you have any general questions on first-time home buyers, they'll be more than happy to direct you in the resource that you need. And also in this website, I would like to show you the About Us tab. So let's go ahead and open that up real quick for everyone to see. And these are just like the main page, so if you want to find anything like some job opportunities, or if you want to see their locations, what else type of services they may offer, you want to contact them, you want to request a speaker, you want to volunteer or do some type of internship, here's where the general page and where you could find all this information is. So once again, I'll show you guys. Once you go to this screen, to the main LA County Consumer Business Affairs screen. Let's open it up. Let's close this tab. It's going to be right here in the top ribbon under About Us section. And then that's where we'll find all that great information. Awesome. So now we're going to go ahead and show you the next website I wanted to show everyone. That one being, let me show everyone first. Okay, here we go. So we talked about the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, right? And now we're going to show the State House, LA, right? So let's go ahead and show that next. And here we are. So once we get to this website, there's just a great amount of information as well. Something that this website does offer, and is something, hopefully we're not going through it, but something just to know and where to look for is in the case if we are going through an eviction, or someone that is being evicted or going through an eviction, there's, different things that they offer. So you could get legal help, you could find a workshop, eviction self-help, or there's a section where they'll give you some prompt on knowing your rights, the different languages they offer for you to navigate through the website. And as you scroll down, as we mentioned, you can find the workshop, find legal service provider, you could sign up for updates. Yeah, this is another great website. And right here, they have their about page, and then the same tabs right here in the bottom too. And you could also navigate it here in the menu side of it. So let's say we want to find a workshop, right? We scroll down, join us for a workshop, and they already give you the prompts on the different workshops they offer, on the different topics they offer. And they are conducted by Zoom, or you could dial in, and you could RSVP there, and all this great information. So those are the two websites we wanted to show everyone. So let's go ahead and go to our main presentation slide. All right. Awesome. Okay, now this is one of the last things we want to leave everyone with, and it's moving into my first rental shopping or / gathering list. And I'd like for everyone to do this right now. You could create your action plan and begin brainstorming on what you need to accomplish to get closer to moving on your own, right? Now, before we end the program, since we have all these great information still kind of fresh on our minds, you could, I highly encourage everyone to grab a piece of paper, grab a writing utensil, and just start writing down different things that they know they need on moving out on their own, Those being maybe create an action plan, right? From start to finish. Well, first, what's the first thing we need to do? Well, depending on everybody's circumstance, maybe the first thing you need to do is getting debt free, or maybe the first thing you need to do is creating a 3 to 6 month expenses emergency fund, right? But as you create this list, you'll start thinking of all these things that you weren't thinking of in the beginning, and you're like, well, this is actually very important. And these are all great things that you need to take in consideration regarding moving out on your own, right? So just a quick little, activity that everyone could do. It wouldn't take that long, but it just keeps the brain, still pumping out these ideas and things that you could think of, and then you could research upon as well on the two great websites we provided you with. So we have gotten towards the end of our presentation. We'll open it up for Q&A if there's any Q&A or any comments from Stephen.
Thank you, Brian. One question, are references needed for a rental apartment application?
Are references required? For the most part, yes. If I do remember correctly, I'm not sure how many references they require. Normally it's like 1 or 2, but for the most part, they do ask for some type of references.
Let's see here. No questions from this attendee, but thank you for sharing all this great information. Thank you, Brian. It's so helpful. The calculator that you shared would help with this, but how much money should I save up to purchase all the items needed before I move out? I'm sure that varies, right?
How much should you save up before you move out? Well, to put a pin number on it, it's kind of hard, right? Because that just depends on, well, where are you going to move out? Are you going to rent? Are you going to buy a home? Are you going to rent a room? Are you going to get some roommates? All those things need to consider, right? But the best like ideal of where we could stand from that, it goes back to where I mentioned the 3 to 6 months emergency fund, right? So you could calculate about how much you spend within a month, you know, those being going out to the movies, for gas, if you're currently paying rent, that also, grocery shopping, any subscriptions that you may have, all those take in consideration and add them up to one monthly expenses, and then multiply it by times 3. That would give you the 3 to 6 months, you know, average. And then from there, you would kind of get an idea, okay, well, this is how much I would have to save about, right, for me to start thinking of where I want to move out. It gives you a great head start. Great question.
Thank you. You know, for purchasing a home, is there a first-time buyer like discount or assistance for first-time buyers?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So let me go ahead and show everyone one more time that website I was talking about. So let's see. All right. So buying a home under the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, we have the section where I was referring on the like the little consultation or the little number that you could, or the number that you could call. Let me see if I could find it real quick for you guys. But definitely, you know, depending on, again, where the area you're wanting to buy a house, credit score and all that. There's definitely some programs for first-time buyers and where a lender or a loan can help you with a certain percentage of it, right? Let's see if we, right here. So to attend a free class for first-time home buyers, contact the Los Angeles County Community Development Commissions, or you could call 323-890-7190, or you could visit them online at this website. So, you know, probably you could give them a call, or you could check that website out, and I'm sure they'll give you more information on, you know, your specific circumstance, if they offer some type of first time like program or discount, and they'll tell you, well, okay, you would have to bring us this amount of percentage where we could help you with the rest. But that's a great question.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Any more questions, folks? Please feel free to drop them into the chat. I think we're coming to the end of the program.
Yeah, well, some things, you know, to think about towards as we're getting towards the end of the program, you know, even like, as I mentioned in the beginning, even if you aren't considering moving out on your own right now, it's just a great things to note down, some notes to think about. All these things we talked about, it's very important, and some things that we should just keep in the back of our head. So when the time does come, we know, hey, I remember Brian, you know, from that workshop that I attended online, said something about renter's insurance. Let me look that up real quick. And then, you know, that'll jog some memory, and you'll be like, oh, I do remember renter's insurance. Or you'll think about, well, I kind of want to move out on my own, but I don't know where to start. What are some, you probably will be thinking, what are some 3 things that I could get started with? Well, you know, as we talked about in the beginning, are we debt free? Do we have that 3-6 monthly expenses emergency fund? Do we have the 5 to 10% percentage if we're considering buying a home? You know, just all these things, even though we're not, you know, moving, we're not taking an action right away. It's just some great things that we got to take in consideration regarding moving out on your own.
Thank you, Brian. Oh, we do have one final question. This is very appropriate since we are LA County Library. Does the library have books on buying a home?
Oh, definitely. That's a great question. Yes, you could look on over our website. Let me see if we probably don't have time, but we could go over, you could go over to our LA County website and search our catalog and search up some of the keywords renting or buying a house, and there'll be a great list of books regarding that. You know, each library has different books. You know, you could place one on hold and place one to your nearest library, or we also have a digital resource, Hoopla and Canopy. Those, so some great resources that you could look into as well, that they offer ebooks. So let's say, you know, you don't want to go from your home, you could just check them out in your house. And from there, you know, you could look up those great books as well. And they probably offer a bit more on, you know, renting or buying a book, but definitely we have a lot of those books here at the LA County Library. It's a great question.
Thank you. And I see our colleague has put a link to our library catalog in the chat as well too.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, we're just getting some gratitude from our attendees. Yeah, thank you, Brian. I think this brings us to the end of our program. So I just want to thank you for your presentation and for all the knowledge you've been providing for us. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for joining us. As we did mention, we are going to, this presentation will be offered later on YouTube. Is that correct, Stephen? So if I remember correctly.
Yeah, in the coming week, this program will be recorded. It has been recorded and it will be posted up on our YouTube channel. And that can be found on our Emerging Adults webpage on our website, which is at lacountylibrary.org/emerging/adults. And all the past programs that we've conducted are also recorded and available on that webpage.
Awesome.
Yeah. So with that, I'd just like to thank everyone for attending. Thank you, Brian, again, and wish everyone a good night.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.